Chapter 30:14. Woo woo. Bow, wake up, wake up. Bow, wake up. Don't scare Mother. Mother will take you to see the candy figurines. Mother will buy them for you, okay? Bow, respond to Mother, ah. The woman stroked the child's head while calling out his nickname. Her voice was mournful, and her tears fell like rain. Fengjiu also felt uncomfortable when he heard this. She didn't expect that because of their negligence, because of their own reasons, this family would become like this. For parents, children were like treasures in their hands, especially such a small child. They were even more protective. Now, the child in the woman's arms was white and chubby, but his eyes were dull and lifeless. Saliva was dripping from the corner of his mouth. No matter how his mother called out to him, no matter how she stroked his head, he didn't have the slightest reaction. She couldn't help but take a deep breath and look at Wan Yanshi-san. Didn't you say you could? Go take a look. The child seemed to have been frightened to the point that his soul was shaken. It shouldn't be difficult for the Wan Yan family to recover his soul. Wan Yanshi-san stepped forward and said to the woman, "Put the child on the bed. I will help you take a look at him." Woo woo. My bow. The woman cried. Her hair was messy, and her face was sorrowful. As if she didn't hear Wan Yanshi-san's words, she still held her child tightly. At this time, the child's father stepped forward and said, "They said they can make bow, better. Quickly put the child on the bed and let them take a look at bow, Maybe they can really cure him." Hearing this, the woman hugged the child and knelt down in front of Wan Yanshi-san and Fengjiu. I beg you to save my child. My child is so obedient. If he becomes like this in the future, what should I do? Don't worry. I can cure him. Put him on the bed. Wan Yanshi-san gestured. The child's father quickly helped the woman up and put the child on the bed. He pulled the woman to the side to watch. Fengjiu was also watching from the side. After Wan Yanshi-san came to the bedside, he took out a red talisman from his sleeve and ordered, "Bring me a teacup." Fengjiu took a teacup from the side and handed it over. He pricked the child's finger and squeezed some blood into the teacup. He then dipped his finger in the blood and drew a talisman on the talisman paper. Finally, he dipped his finger in the blood and pressed it on the child's eyebrows, leaving a blood-colored fingerprint there. Water, Wan Yanshi-san called. Fengjiu came forward with the kettle. He took the kettle and poured half a cup of clear water into the blood-stained teacup. He held the talisman paper between two fingers and brushed it. When the flames burned, he stuffed the talisman paper into the teacup. He watched as the talisman paper turned into ashes and turned into talisman water. He helped the child up and poured the talisman water into the child's mouth. Not long after, the blood-colored fingerprint between the child's eyebrows disappeared without a trace. Immediately after, the child's originally dull eyes gradually regained their vitality. Mother, father. The child climbed up from the bed. Seeing so many strangers in the house, he was both afraid and curious. The woman and man were startled and went forward with joy. Bow, you're better. Bow, you're better. That's great. Bow, mother's good bow, Chapter 30:15. Seeing the child looking at them curiously, Fengjiu smiled. With a flip of her hand, a bright red fruit appeared in her palm. She stepped forward and offered the fruit to the child. Here, eat it. Looking at the child, she couldn't help but think of little Hao. After a few more years, little Hao would be this big. When the little guy was a little more mature, she could teach him cultivation. When the child saw the red fruit, he couldn't help but bite his lips. He looked at his mother, then at Fengjiu. Finally, he reached out to take it and held it tightly in his hands. "Thank you, big brother." The child's soft voice was filled with joy as he thanked them. Thank you, both of you." Only then did the couple react and quickly thank them. The mayor looked at Fengjiu and Wan Yanshi-san. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "Both of you, please come outside to talk." When the two of them saw this, they followed him outside. When they were outside, the mayor asked, "May I ask who the two of you are?" He originally thought that they were from the heretical sects, but now it seemed that they were not quite the same. Wan Yanshi-san was about to speak when he heard Fengjiu's voice. "We are from the immortal sect. This time, we were ordered to do something. However, we didn't expect to be ambushed in the small town. We also didn't expect that this would cause a misunderstanding." While speaking, Fengjiu took out a token and handed it over. When the mayor saw it, he was relieved. "So you are from the immortal sect? Then we really misunderstood you." He breathed a sigh of relief and finally relaxed. He handed the token back and said, "Because the people in the town saw you killing people in the restaurant, and there were also ghosts floating around, so they thought you were from the heretical sections. Now that the misunderstanding has been cleared up, this Chin apologizes to the two of you." While speaking, he cupped his hands and bowed to the two as an apology. After all, they had misunderstood them and even said that they wanted to chase them away. Now that he thought about it, it was really rude. Fengjiu smiled and said, "Mayor, we are here on a mission. I heard that there is a small village nearby that often has problems." Hearing this, the mayor was startled. "Are you talking about the village near the Yin Mountain? That place is taboo. The town has set up a taboo. That place is forbidden from being talked about or discussed. We came here because a senior apprentice sister was ordered to clean up the filthy things there, but she went missing. The immortal sect sent us here to look for her. If Mayor knows anything, you can tell us." Fengjiu said slowly. The mayor hesitated for a moment and said, "How about this? Follow me back to the residence. You can rest in my residence tonight so that I can find time to have a good talk with you." "Sorry to bother you," Fengjiu said with a smile and glanced at Wan Yanshi-san. Wan Yanshi-san glanced at her and didn't say anything. He just followed the mayor out and stayed in his residence tonight. Because of the mayor's words and the family's child's recovery, the townspeople gradually came to know that these two people weren't bad people. Thus, they relaxed and dispersed. Chapter 30:16. I don't know when it started, but the Yin Mountain has been shrouded in clouds all year round, and there have been rumors of strange things happening in the village at the foot of the Yin Mountain. I went there once and advised the villagers to move, but the ancestors of the dozen or so families there have been there for generations, and they wouldn't move even if I told them to. Later, some cultivators who were passing by wanted to go there to see what was going on, but none of them came back. Those who went in groups also didn't come back. Gradually, no one dared to go there anymore. Fengjiu asked, "What about the villagers? Are they still alive and well?" "Yes, that's what's strange. The village was built on the mountain, and there weren't many families. Only a few strange things happened, but no one had any problems. That's really strange." Fengjiu and Wan Yanshi-san looked at each other and asked, "Then before that, did the mayor see an extremely beautiful woman in red come to town?" "That woman was my senior sister. She was the one who went to the small village under orders." "An extremely beautiful woman in red?" The mayor thought for a moment and said, "Now that you mention it, there really was such a beautiful woman in red. At that time, it was because a few cultivators passing by took a fancy to her beauty and wanted to make a move on her, which caused a commotion. Otherwise, with so many people in the town, we wouldn't have been able to remember who she was. And then? Wan Yenshir-san asked. After that, those male cultivators who had their eyes on the woman in red ran out of the city crazily for some reason, saying that something was chasing them. Later on, I heard that the woman in red stayed in the town for a night and then left. She also went in the direction of Een Mountain. Hearing this, the two fell into deep thought. She really did go to the small village in the Een Mountain. Since she went there, with Wan Yenxinhua's cultivation and strength, how could she have gone missing? What exactly happened there? That night, the two listened to the mayor talk about the small village in the Een Mountain. They didn't return to their rooms to rest until it was late at night. After entering the room, Feng Jiu meditated and closed her eyes to cultivate. However, in the middle of the night, she suddenly heard the sound of someone walking on the roof. She immediately opened her eyes and pushed open the door to go outside. She jumped onto the roof and saw a black figure carrying an unconscious girl across the roof, heading into the night. Who is it? When Feng Jiu shouted, Wan Yenshir-san's figure also jumped out. He went around from the other side and blocked the way of the black figure. Seeing the man in black carrying a girl who was unconscious and only wearing a white undergarment, he immediately shouted, "Put her down." As soon as his voice fell, he attacked the man in black at the same time. When he heard the commotion, he didn't even have time to put on his clothes. When he saw the young girl on the black figure's shoulder, he was so scared that he almost fainted. "That's my daughter, my daughter." He shouted in panic and wanted to go up to help. However, he saw that the man in black was still agile while carrying the girl. Feng Jiu and Wan Yenshir-san were blocking him. He was afraid that he would be more of a hindrance if he went up, so he stayed below to guard. Chapter 30:17. Seeing the young girl being thrown to the ground from the roof, Feng Jiu immediately leaped up and caught her. He landed steadily and handed the young girl over to the mayor. However, when he looked up again, he saw that the black-clothed man had smashed something down. Thick smoke filled the air, blurring his vision. Just as the black-clothed man was about to take the opportunity to leave, Feng Jiu moved her fingers slightly, and a silver needle shot out with a whoosh. Ah! With a muffled groan, the man in black, who had jumped up, fell on the roof and rolled down to the ground. When he was about to get up, Wan Yen 13, who had jumped down from above, stepped on him and pressed him down. When he was about to pull him up and interrogate him, he saw the man in black stiffen and bend his body slightly, as if all the tendons and veins in his body were twitching. Then his eyes bulged and he fell down. Seeing this, the two frowned. He died just like that. Xiao Ru, Xiao Ru. The mayor covered his daughter, who was only wearing undergarments, with his coat and called out, but his daughter showed no signs of waking up. "She's just unconscious from the drug. It's all right. She'll wake up tomorrow morning," Feng Jiu said, telling the mayor not to worry. Hearing Feng Jiu's words, the mayor nodded. "I'll send Xiao Ru back to her room first." Saying this, he sent his daughter back to her room and sent people to patrol the manor. "This man in black has an evil aura on him," Wan Yenshir-san said, and thought for a moment, then said, "He should be someone from the evil faction." But why would someone from the evil faction appear in this small town? Why would someone from the evil faction want to capture this girl? And they only sent one person. It's a little strange. Feng Jiu said, looking at the man on the ground. Ask the mayor. Maybe he'll know something. Okay. Wan Yenshir-san nodded. After the mayor settled his daughter down, they went to look for him. Before the two of them could say anything, the mayor waved his hand, indicating that there was no need to say anything. He said, "I know what you want to ask." "That's right, I did hide some things." He sighed and said, "Tonight, I've told you so much about Een Mountain, but I didn't tell you about our town." Recently, there have been young girls disappearing for no reason in our town. Because of this, every family is in a state of panic. Many families with daughters have moved to the city. Some families with daughters have locked them up at home and not allowed them to go out. They are afraid that they will lose their daughters. I've guessed that something must have happened at Mountain when all the families lost their daughters. However, I didn't dare to tell anyone because I didn't have the ability to save them. I could only protect my daughter and not let anything happen to her. I know I'm selfish, but there's nothing I can do. Hearing this, Wanyan-san said in a deep voice, then all the more reason why you should tell us, so that we can be prepared. Let us know what's going on. Fengjiu smiled and didn't mind, only saying, I think the mayor thinks that after we go to Mountain, we won't be able to return. If you tell us about this, I'm afraid it will cause unnecessary trouble. Chapter 30:18. I'm sorry. The mayor lowered his head in shame. All right, I'll go back and sleep for a while, Fengjiu said. She did not say anything else and turned to go back to her room. Wanyan-san glanced at the mayor and also turned to go back to his room. The next day, the two of them left at dawn and headed towards the small village in the Mountain. As they walked along the small path, Wanyan-san looked at Fengjiu and asked, Little girl, who are you? The two of them had been walking together for a few days. He did not know anything about her other than the fact that her name was Fengjiu and that she was Wanyan-chanhua's sworn sister. What? You want to know my background? Fengjiu smiled and glanced at him. Why would I want to know your background? I was just thinking that you're quite capable. Where did you come from? I just arrived here not long ago. I came down from the Immortal Ascension stairs, Fengjiu said. She took out 2 fruits and threw one to him. Wanyan-san caught the fruit and was slightly surprised. You came down from the Immortal Ascension stairs? You're not simple. No one brought you. No one. She shook her head. If the people here wanted to bring people from their families up, it was not impossible. However, if no one brought them up and they had to come up by themselves, they could only do so after reaching the Immortal Emperor level. Thus, when she said that she came up by herself, Wanyan-san looked at her in surprise. If she did not say it, he would not have known that she was already an Immortal Emperor. However, her current strength was not just an Immortal Emperor. TSK, impressive. I really couldn't tell, he stared at Fengjiu and smiled. Do you have someone you like? Uncle can introduce you to someone. Our Wanyan family specializes in handsome men and beautiful women. Fengjiu did not say anything. She only looked at him with a half-smile. What's with that look? What? Am I not handsome? Am I not handsome? I'm not a man. Wanyan-san snorted and said, Let me tell you, I'm a burly masculine man. Ordinary gigolos can't compare to me. Everyone in our Yen family is like me. All the women are as beautiful as flowers. Of course, there are very few like Qianhua. As he spoke, he took a bite of the fruit and said, Spirit fruit. Looks like you've hidden a lot of good stuff. Look ahead. Fengjiu gestured, and her eyes fell on the front. In broad daylight, there were a few children of 4 or 5 years old playing on the small path. The children's laughter could be heard, and the few figures were also jumping on the small path, chasing after each other. They looked like ordinary children, but upon closer inspection, one would realize that the sun was high up in the sky and there was sunlight on the path. However, the children did not have shadows. Although they were chasing and playing, their heels did not touch the ground. Brat? Wanyan-san was slightly surprised and looked up at the bright sun in the sky. Under such a scorching sun, these brats actually dared to come out and play. He strode forward. As soon as the little ghosts saw him coming over aggressively, they screamed and ran away quickly. Chapter 30:19. Little girl, stay close to me, Wan Yen-shur-san said. He stepped on the ground and quickened his pace to catch up. He didn't put the little ghosts away at once. Instead, he followed them at a leisurely pace. Fengjiu followed behind him. She walked along the path until she entered the dense forest. As soon as she entered the dense forest, she felt that the air was a little colder. The sunlight couldn't shine into the dense forest, so it was a little darker inside. She raised her eyes to look inside. In the blink of an eye, Wan Yen-shur-san had disappeared. The surroundings were quiet. Only the wind blew, the leaves on the ground rolled up, and the leaves on the trees rustled when they touched each other. Wan Yen-shur-san. Fengjiu called out. She slowed down her pace and walked inside. It had only been a while. How could he disappear? She walked inside, but because there was no obvious path to take in the dense forest, she soon got lost and couldn't get out of here. Wan Yen-shur-san. She called out. She stopped and looked around. What she saw were trees and weeds that were half a person's height. Just as she was about to go back, she saw an earth spirit ginseng moving in the weeds. Her eyes lit up. She couldn't help but hide her breath and follow it. After walking for a while, she felt that something was following her. She turned around and saw a dirty child. Little ghost. It was following her. When it saw her turn around, it panicked and hid behind a big tree. Why are you following me? Fengjiu asked. Her voice was very soft because she was afraid of startling the earth spirit ginseng that she was going to catch. You can't go there, the little ghost said timidly. Hearing that, Fengjiu was a little surprised. She said, I don't want to go in. I want to catch that. She pointed at the earth spirit ginseng that was hidden in the weeds with only a little red flower showing. As soon as she finished speaking, the little ghost hesitated for a moment before cautiously moving forward. His figure gradually became transparent. Finally, he went around her and squatted down next to the earth spirit ginseng. He reached out his hand and pulled it out. Fengjiu looked at the little ghost in astonishment. It stretched out its hand to look at the ginseng, and then looked at Fengjiu. It stretched out its hand and handed it to Fengjiu. Here you go. Even Fengjiu couldn't help but stare blankly. After recovering, she took the earth spirit ginseng. The ginseng was 2 fingers wide, shaped like a person, and had a swaggering red flower at the top of the ginseng. She took out a rope and tied it to the ginseng. Then she put it into the space and planted it there. Only then did she look at the timid little ghost standing in front of her. After thinking for a while, she asked, Why aren't you afraid of the sun? Such a small little ghost actually dared to wander around in broad daylight. Ah! At that moment, a shrill scream rang out. It was sharp and ear-piercing, and when it spread through the forest, it caused people to shudder involuntarily. At that moment, the little ghost ran towards the source of the sound. Seeing that, Fengjiu followed it. Passing through trees and weeds, when they arrived at the place, they saw a middle-aged man in a gray robe with a horsetail whisk in his hand. In front of him, a ghost was kneeling. The ghost's figure was sometimes illusory and sometimes real. It floated and swayed as if its soul was going to scatter at any time. Chapter 30:20. Fengjiu frowned slightly when he saw the spiritual power coming out of the horsetail whisk and attacking the little ghost. He waved his sleeve and blocked the attack for the 2 ghosts. The middle-aged man holding the horsetail whisk did not expect Fengjiu to suddenly make a move, so he was repelled by the force and staggered back a few steps. He was slightly angry and stared at Fengjiu and scolded, What are you doing? The other ghosts who had retreated to the side were also stunned, as if they did not expect this human to protect ghosts. Wan Yenshir-san raised his thick eyebrows and looked at Fingzhou. However, he did not scold Fingzhou. Instead, he took a big step forward, put his hands on his hips, and glared at the middle-aged man holding the horsetail whisk. What are you doing? Ah. After bullying ghosts, you want to bully people. After being yelled at by Wan Yenshir-san, the middle-aged man took a step back to avoid being sprayed with saliva. He pointed at the two with the horsetail whisk and said, You are unreasonable. Those are ghosts, they are scourges. Why are you protecting them? Scourge you? Have you seen them scourge people? Fingzhou asked slowly. Seeing the little ghost holding the ghost that was gradually fading and crying, he could not help but frown and ask Wan Yenshir-san, Don't you know this? Let the big ones see, lest its soul scatter. Wan Yenshir-san was slightly surprised and looked at Fingzhou, asking, Are we really going to save it? Of course. Fingzhou said matter-of-factly and asked curiously, Why not? They didn't do anything to us. That's true. Wan Yenshir-san nodded. Then he stepped forward and took out a piece of white jade from his bosom. He said to the ghost, Go in. This white jade can nourish your soul and restore you to your original state. When the ghost heard this, it could not help but look at them. After thinking for a while, it turned into a wisp of smoke and entered the white jade. Here, for you. Wan Yenshir-san handed the white jade to Fingzhou. Fingzhou took it and handed it to the little ghost. Take it. Consider it my thanks for helping me catch the earth spirit ginseng. Hearing this, Wan Yenshir-san grinned. So that's how it was. He knew it. This little girl was so kind to help these two ghosts. It turned out that she received benefits from the ghosts. When the middle-aged man saw this, his face darkened and he asked, Who are the two of you? Why are you stopping me from taking them? Although I'm a layman, I can see that these ghosts don't have a strong baleful aura. They probably haven't harmed anyone before. Fingzhou glanced at the man and said, There are good and bad ghosts. If they haven't harmed anyone, why do you want to take them? Preposterous. The middle-aged man shouted, These things shouldn't exist. It's one thing if I didn't encounter them, but now that I've encountered them, how can I not take them? Fingzhou smiled, Since you want to take them so much, why don't you come with us to Yin Mountain? Where is that? The middle-aged man asked with a dark face. Obviously, he did not know that place. Are you a passing rogue cultivator? No, you don't seem to be from an ordinary immortal sect. Fingzhou glanced at him and said. Chapter 30-21. The Carefree Sect. Fingzhou nodded in understanding, so that's how it is. My apologies for not recognizing you. Humph. The middle-aged man snorted. He waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and held it between his arms. Wan Yenshir-san also laughed, That's great. So it's a perfected person from the Carefree Sect. If you really accompany us to the Yin Mountain, then we'll definitely be able to get rid of the ghosts there. Yin Mountain. What is that place? Is it also haunted by ghosts like here? When the middle-aged man heard this, he asked, Who are you two? The green-robed man just waved his sleeve and actually made him take a few steps back. It was clear that his strength was not ordinary. However, looking at his bone age, he was very young. The two looked at each other and said in unison, We're from the Blue Star Immortal Sect. Well, now the two of them directly used the name of the Blue Star Immortal Sect. However, it had to be said that it was indeed much easier to do things with this name. It was simple and saved a lot of explanation. Once they said it, the hostility of the other party decreased a lot. The Blue Star Immortal Sect of the four great immortal sects. He looked at the two of them. After seeing the token Fingzhou took out, he nodded, Let's talk. What kind of place is this Yin Mountain? Also, these ghosts are evil beings. Why do you want to protect them? Fengjiu looked at the little ghost who was timidly hiding to the side and said, "This little ghost helped me catch the earth spirit ginseng and stopped me from going deeper. I was about to ask why when I heard a scream." She paused and said to Wan Yanshi-san, "Tell this perfected person about the Yin Mountain. I'll go ask the little ghost." With that, she walked towards the little ghost. Perhaps because Fengjiu helped them, the other ghosts only looked at her warily. They didn't move or run away. Instead, they quietly watched her approach. "Can you tell me about the area around here? Since you're here, I'm sure you know a thing or two about Yin Mountain, right?" She looked at the ghosts and asked. "There's a powerful ghost king over there, and there are also people from the heretical schools raising ghosts to refine corpses. We don't dare to get too close to that place. If we get discovered, we'll be eaten." A touch of ghost said, glancing at Fengjiu, and continued, "Many cultivators went there and never came out. They all died. Those ghosts suck people's blood essence, especially the cultivator's soul essence, which can strengthen the soul. If we walk further in, we'll reach Yin Mountain. It's not safe there," the little ghost whispered. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed and he asked, "I heard that there is a small village nearby. What's up with that village?" "We've never been close to that village, so we don't know." The ghosts shook their heads, indicating that they did not know. On the other side, Wan Yanshi-san gave the middle-aged man a rough explanation of what had happened on Yin Mountain. After he heard the whole story, the middle-aged man immediately said, "Since it's like that, I'll go with you." "Haha, that's great. With a perfected person going with us, we'll be at ease." Wan Yanshi-san smiled and winked at Fengjiu. "You can go." Fengjiu glanced at the ghosts and signaled for them to leave. Chapter 30-22. When the middle-aged man saw this, he frowned and said, "You are too soft-hearted. If they harm people in the future, won't it be your fault today?" Fengjiu chuckled. "Do you want to destroy them now just to prevent those things from happening in the future?" The middle-aged man was silent and did not speak. Wan Yanshi-san smiled and said, all right. Let's go to the small village and see what's going on." Thus, the three of them left the forest together and walked along the small path until they arrived at the small village hidden in the mountain. When they saw the smoke rising from the small village, it was peaceful. Fengjiu and Wan Yanshi-san looked at each other discreetly. This place looked like an ordinary village. In fact, it was even more peaceful than an ordinary village. However, it was different when it was too peaceful. As they walked forward, they saw 2 rows of peach trees planted at the entrance of the village. Almost every house had a peach tree behind it. Many of the peach trees even had pink and delicious peaches hanging from them. "Why are there so many peach trees in this village?" the middle-aged man said as he looked around. He came under a peach tree and reached out to pluck a peach. He wiped it and ate it. When Wan Yanshi-san saw this, he plucked 2 peaches and handed one to Fengjiu. "Here, try it." "Are we stealing peaches?" Fengjiu asked with a smile. He reached out to take the peach. After wiping the peaches clean, he took a bite and walked inside. An old woman sat in front of a house. The old woman looked at them and asked, "Who are you looking for?" Her voice was hoarse and old, and she sounded a little weak. "We are from the immortal sect. We were sent here on a mission." As Wan Yanshi-san spoke, he strode forward and asked, "Did a beautiful woman in red come here a while ago?" "A woman in red?" The old woman thought for a moment and nodded. "Yes, she came and stayed for a night before leaving. She went to that mountain." She stretched out her skinny hand and pointed at a distant mountain. "Sir, can we stay here for the night?" Fengjiu asked. Sure, but we don't have much to entertain you here. The place is simple and crude. You are immortals, can you get used to living here? The old woman asked as she stood up with the help of the door. We're not picky, Wan Yenshir-san said with a smile. Come with me. No one lives behind my house, so you guys can stay there. A while ago, the red-clothed fairy came and stayed in the house behind my house. As the old woman spoke, she led them to the back. After arriving at a simple house, she asked them to say, we only have a dozen or so families here. They are all elderly people living here. The young ones have all gone outside. I heard that strange things often happen in your village. Can you tell us about it? Fengjiu asked. Strange? Strange things are that people fall out of their beds when they sleep at night, bump into walls when they walk at night, and even fall down. 2 days ago, old Madame Li fell down. She's still lying in bed now. When they heard this, they said, I know a little about medicine. I can help take a look at her. Please lead us there. Okay. The old woman nodded. With trembling steps, she led them to the house at the back of the village. Chapter 30-23. Hearing this, the old lady turned to look at Fengjiu and said, because this place is called Peach Village. What kind of answer was that? It sounded right, but it was not the answer she wanted to know. She felt that it was not just because of the name. Peach trees were meant to ward off evil spirits, and this village was strange. If the people who lived here did not know about it, it would be even stranger. However, it was obvious that the old lady did not want to talk about it, so she did not ask. This is the place. The old lady pushed the door open and said, she lives here with her husband. Come in. As she spoke, the old lady walked in and said, Old Lady Li, a few immortals passed by and said that they could treat you. I brought them here. Go in. I'll go back first. The old woman said as she walked out. Fengjiu and the others walked in and saw an old lady lying on the bed and an old man busying himself in the room. They went up to greet them. Old lady, where are you hurt? Fengjiu asked. After sizing them up, the 2 old men pointed at their feet and said, they hurt their feet. Fengjiu went up to take a look and saw that there was medicine on her feet. He applied the medicine and saw that it was only a swollen hamstring. He took out the medicine and bandaged it again, saying, it's just a hamstring injury. It's not a big deal. You'll be fine after 2 days. As she spoke, she asked, Old lady, how did you fall? Those things pushed me. The old lady said and looked at them, we're used to this kind of thing happening here. Fengjiu laughed lightly, Old lady, how do you know that those things pushed you? If those things really existed, they wouldn't have pushed you down. You call yourself an immortal. You don't know, do you? Those things don't dare to come close. Even if they do, they don't dare to touch us. The old woman chuckled as she lay on the bed and said, here, those who often fall down or fall off the bed won't be able to live for long. Why do you say that? Fengjiu felt a little strange. Because of my bad luck and the chaos caused by those things, even if I don't die, I will be tortured to death. I don't think I have many days left to live. Her tone was indifferent, as if she was talking about someone else's matter. There was no fear in her voice. You people outside must be wondering why those filthy things don't dare to touch us or come close to us, right? This old woman will tell you today. It's because our village has planted peach trees. Peach trees can ward off evil spirits. Ordinary evil things don't dare to get close to them, but there are some powerful ones. However, we are not afraid because we are all wearing clothes made of peach tree bark. Hearing this, the 3 of them were slightly shocked. Clothes made of peach bark. That was many years ago. An old immortal asked us to plant peach trees. He said that they were edible and could ward off evil spirits. Thirdly, they were beautiful. The old immortal even taught us to weave clothes with the branches of the peach trees. Every family had one. Hearing this, they came to a realization. So that was the case. Fengjiu and the others said their goodbyes and turned to leave. They returned to the house that the old lady had arranged for them to rest. Chapter 30-24. It was a pity that they could not meet such a person. What kind of person would have such foresight? They said they were going to rest in the village, but they quietly left at night and headed towards Yin Mountain. They planned to investigate Yin Mountain, so it was more convenient to act at night. You too, follow behind me. The middle-aged man said and waved his horsetail whisk, gesturing for Wang Yanshi-san and Fengjiu to follow behind him. Fengjiu smiled. That's not very good, is it? What's not very good about it? I'm older than you, so it's only right for me to protect you and lead the way for them. The middle-aged man said with a piercingly cold aura, acting like an elder. Wang Yanshi-san stopped Fengjiu, who was about to speak, and said with a smile, "That's great. We're really lucky to have a perfected person leading the way for us." Hearing this, the middle-aged man seemed to be quite satisfied. He nodded slightly in response and walked in front to lead the way for them. Fengjiu glanced at Wang Yanshi-san. She did not expect this guy to be so two-faced. That perfected person was not as strong as Wang Yanshi-san, so naturally, he was not as strong as her. Yet, he had to lead the way. It felt a little like cheating. Even someone as thick-skinned as her felt a little embarrassed. The three of them walked forward, and along the way, they heard the cries of the insects. As the night deepened, they relied on the dim light above their heads to see the road ahead. As they got closer to Yin Mountain, she felt that the aura in the air was getting colder and colder. She circulated the spiritual energy in her body to warm her body as she looked ahead. She saw faint spots of light floating in the dense forest in front of her, making whining sounds. The three of them entered the dense forest. The middle-aged man walking in front looked at the green lights and snorted, "These evildoers." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his horsetail whisk and released a wave of spiritual energy. Whoosh! One of the green lights was hit and instantly let out a mournful scream, while the others quickly scattered and fled. Hearing the scream that pierced through the night, the middle-aged man seemed a little embarrassed. He turned to look at Fengjiu and Wang Yanshi-san. I didn't expect them to scream so loudly. Wang Yanshi-san smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. This forest is so big, and the howling of the ghosts will sound from time to time. It won't attract attention. Alright, let's continue." Yuan. Ah. Before he could finish his sentence, he seemed to have been caught in a trap. There was a rustling sound around him, and a huge net was put away. The middle-aged man was caught in the net and hung up. Wang Yanshi-san and Fengjiu were startled. They looked at the middle-aged man who was dangling in the air and struggling. They asked, "Spiritual master, are you all right?" Looking at the serious-looking enlightened master being hung up and swinging on the ceiling, the two of them had a hard time holding back the laughter that was about to leap onto their faces. "I'm fine, don't worry." Before he could finish speaking, he heard a sharp sound. The three of them looked in the direction of the sound and saw several sharp arrows shoot out from the forest. The arrows seemed to be connected to the net, and they all shot towards the middle-aged man who was hanging on the net. Chapter 30-25. Wang Yanshi-san and Fengjiu flew out at the same time. One of them blocked the sharp arrows that were shooting at the net, while the other condensed a blade of air to cut at the net. Bang! With a bang, the middle-aged man who was hanging in mid-air fell to the ground with the net. With a muffled groan, the middle-aged man quickly broke free from the net. Are you all right? The two came to his side and asked. Perhaps he felt a little embarrassed, so he coughed lightly and said, I'm fine. As he patted his robe, he said, I didn't expect there to be a trap here. I have to be careful. The two responded and smiled. They didn't say anything else, as it would only make him more embarrassed. The three of them continued to walk forward. This time, the middle-aged man walking in front was clearly more careful. It was as if he was concentrating all his energy. Feeling his tension, Fengjiu smiled and asked, Jinren, I still don't know what your title is. Hearing this, the middle-aged man looked back at Fengjiu and said, My surname is Qin and my name is Shan. In the sect, I'm called Jinren Qin. You can call me that. Along the way, he only knew that one of them was Fengjiu and the other was Wan Yanshi-san. They were from the Blue Star Immortal sect. However, looking at their strength, they weren't weak. He just didn't know what rank they were in the sect. Jinren Qin, I heard that the Carefree sect's carefree swordsmanship is the most powerful. However, I saw that Jinren Qin used a horsetail whisk. Could it be that Jinren Qin didn't practice the carefree swordsmanship? Fengjiu asked with a smile. As long as you're a disciple of the Carefree sect, you can practice the carefree swordsmanship. I'm no exception. However, only the core disciples of the Carefree sect can practice the carefree swordsmanship. Therefore, there are very few core disciples who can practice the entire carefree swordsmanship. Those who can truly understand the essence of the carefree swordsmanship are even fewer. As he spoke, he looked at Fengjiu and asked, What's wrong? Are you interested in the free and unfettered swordsmanship? Haha, a little. Fengjiu smiled. It's useless even if you're interested. You're already a disciple of the Blue Star Immortal sect. Otherwise, you could have joined my carefree sect. He turned around and looked at Fengjiu with a look that said, You don't stand a chance. Fengjiu smiled and said, Jinren Qin, be careful. She kindly reminded him. What's in front? Hiss. When he turned around, he bumped into a tree branch. He felt a burning sensation on his forehead, causing him to gasp in pain. Wan Yanshi-san couldn't help but laugh. I say, Jinren Qin. Why would you want to come down the mountain to gain experience? He felt like he didn't really fit in with the outside world, and he didn't keep his guard up. It was very easy for such a person to be taken advantage of outside. He rubbed his forehead and said with a dark face, Is it very funny? What's so funny? He didn't say anything more to the two of them and walked forward with large strides. Wan Yanshi-san walked beside Fengjiu and said with a smile, He's really brave. After what we said, he still dared to follow us to the Yin Mountain. However, he doesn't keep his guard up. I really don't know how he survived until now. Chapter 30-26. As the three of them walked forward, some ghosts gradually followed behind them. Some tried to pounce on them, while others emerged from the ground and hugged their feet tightly, as if they wanted to pull them into the ground. Fengjiu realized that the gourd that her sister gave her, which could ward off evil spirits and make ghosts not dare to approach, was not effective here. Fortunately, she had Wan Yanshi-san and Jinren Qin by her side. These two people's ability to deal with these ghosts was not weak. When they attacked, they scattered the souls of the ghosts, so that the ghosts that followed them did not dare to come close. Jinren Qin, who was walking in front, stopped and raised his hand to signal the two people behind him to stop. He lowered his voice and said, The smell of blood in front is a bit heavy. You guys wait here for a while. I'll go check it out. Seeing him flash forward, Wan Yanshi-san said to Fengjiu, Let's go. We'll follow, in case something happens again. Fengjiu smiled and followed behind. The further they went, the heavier the smell of blood. When they saw Jinren stop there and did not move, they could not help but be surprised. They quickly walked forward and asked, "What's wrong?" They asked. Jinren-chen's face was pale, and there was anger in his eyes. He did not speak, but raised his hand and pointed forward. Fengjiu and Wang Yanshi-san looked in the direction his finger was pointing. They saw a woman hanging upside down from a tree in front of them. Her body was covered in wounds, and blood dripped down from her body, dyeing a large area on the ground red. Less than 15 meters away, there was another woman hanging from a tree. Her hair was stained with blood and hung down vertically. Her face was pale and bloodless, and there was only blood oozing out of her 7 orifices. Her appearance in the dark forest was very frightening at first glance. These bastards! Daoist Chen's chest was filled with anger as he clenched his fists and cursed. He didn't go up to the 2 dead women, but he quickly went deeper into the forest. There, he could faintly hear miserable screams begging for mercy. Fengjiu and Wang Yanshi-san followed with ugly expressions. However, Wang Yanshi-san followed Qin Jinren, while Fengjiu walked towards the 2 naked women. He condensed 2 qi blades between his fingers and cut them, putting them down. Seeing that the 2 were no longer alive, she sighed softly and waved her sleeves, sending 2 clusters of flames towards the 2 corpses. Those who were already dead could only be melted by the flames and blown away by the wind. This was the best place for them to return to. If they were buried underground, they would most likely be eaten by ferocious beasts. They would end up dying without a complete corpse. As the flames burned, the light in the forest also lit up. A foul smell also drifted with the night wind until the 2 corpses turned into ashes and were blown away by the wind. She went deeper in and heard the sound of swords clashing. She quickened her pace and saw that there was still a cage of women trapped there. Fortunately, these women were still alive. Chapter 30-27. Clang! She stretched out her hand to pull Qin Jinren away and blocked the attack with her green-edged sword. The 2 swords collided with a crisp clang and sparks flew from the blade. When the evil cultivator saw the green-edged sword in Fengjiu's hand, his cold eyes couldn't help but shrink. Ghost Dr. Fengjiu. Hearing this, Fengjiu narrowed her eyes and pushed Daoist Master Qin to the side. She held her sword and went forward. As the tip of the sword spun, a sharp aura mixed with a powerful pressure enveloped down, causing the evil cultivator to retreat step by step in panic. Whoosh! A ray of green light streaked across the sky, and a sharp sword chi shot towards the immortal venerable evil cultivator. The evil cultivator couldn't dodge in time and let out a muffled groan. His shoulder was hit by the chi, and the wound was so deep that his bones could be seen. His entire shoulder was almost cut off. Edited by Lifer, Fingerfox. Using the strength of a peak heavenly god to deal with an immortal venerable was like an adult beating a child. She spun the green-tipped sword in her hand and slashed out with sword chi, killing 2 evil cultivators who were pouncing on her. At the same time, she walked forward and stared at the evil cultivator who was wearing a green ghost mask. You know me. I didn't know I was so famous here. Qin Jinren was stunned. He knew that Fengjiu wasn't weak, but he didn't expect him to be so strong. His sword was so smooth and beautiful. His sword technique was not inferior to the carefree sect's carefree sword technique. Moreover, the evil cultivator was an immortal venerable. How could he retreat in front of him without any resistance? Could it be that his strength was beyond the immortal venerable level? Also, the evil cultivator knew him. Ghost Dr. Fengjiu. Why was it Fengjiu? Wasn't he a disciple of the Blue Star Immortal Sect? Without giving him time to think, the other evil cultivators attacked him. He wasn't a match for the 2 immortal venerables, but he could deal with the weaker ones. Immediately, he stopped thinking and focused on the battle. However, when he came to Wang Yanshirsan's side, he couldn't help but look at him. This Wang Yanshirsan could actually fight against a venerable immortal. So it turned out that he was the weakest among the three of them. Thinking about how he was the weakest among them, yet he had been walking in front of them the entire time. He even said that he would protect them and let them follow behind him. They couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. On the other side, Fengzhou cut the tendons of the evil cultivator's limbs with the tip of his sword, sealed his spiritual qi, and dragged him over. On the other side, Wang Yanshirsan killed the other evil cultivator with a single strike. At the same time, he also killed the rest of the evil cultivators, leaving no one alive. Fengzhou glanced at the corpses on the ground and looked at him. Have you forgotten that we're here to look for someone? Didn't you leave one alive? You said that we should start with him, Wang Yanshirsan said and glanced at the evil cultivator who was lying on the ground, unable to move. The evil cultivator's qi was sealed. Even if he wanted to self-destruct, he couldn't do it. His chin was chopped off, and saliva mixed with blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Chapter 30-28. Fengzhou glanced at the sorcerer but did not ask him anything. Instead, he walked to the women who were locked up and released them from the cages. The women hugged each other and did not dare to approach them. Don't be afraid. We're not bad people, Wang Yanshirsan said. However, his words did not make the women let down their guard. Instead, they began to cry. Why are you crying? Women are so troublesome, he said angrily. Seeing Fengzhou staring at him, he said in a low voice, I'm not talking about you. Fengzhou glanced at him and walked forward. He said to the women, we're from the immortal sect. We're here for a mission. Don't worry, we'll send you back. But before that, you have to answer a few questions. Hearing this, one of the women asked timidly, What questions? Have you seen an extremely beautiful woman dressed in red? She asked. Yes, I saw her when I was first caught. She was very beautiful, but she was surrounded by the sorcerers. There was also a very powerful sorcerer. She was injured and ran away. Those sorcerers chased after her. We don't know if she's dead or alive. We haven't seen her since that day. Hearing this, Fengzhou and Wang Yanshirsan looked at each other and asked for some details. In the end, the two of them walked to the sorcerer and stood in front of him. Wang Yanshirsan clenched his fist and said to Fengzhou, let me break his teeth first. That way, I'm afraid he'll bite his tongue and commit suicide after I reattach his jaw. Okay. Fengzhou nodded in agreement. Wang Yanshirsan clenched his fist and punched the sorcerer's mouth hard. With a scream, the sorcerer's teeth fell to the ground. His mouth was full of blood. It was a horrible sight. Chen Jinren shook his head and muttered in his heart, too cruel, these two are too cruel. Wang Yanshirsan held the heretic's chin and asked, speak. Where is that woman in red? The evil cultivator spat out a mouthful of blood and felt a gust of air leaking out of his mouth. Unable to move his body, his spiritual power was sealed, and his teeth were knocked out. It could be said that he was in a state worse than death. He suppressed his anger and glared fiercely at the two of them. He kept his mouth shut and didn't say a word. You're not going to tell me? I have plenty of ways to make you talk. Wang Yanshirsan snorted coldly and went forward to lift him up. He reached out his hand and pinched his spine. His hand moved, and for a moment, a heart-wrenching scream rang out. Ah! Are you going to tell me or not? Wang Yanshirsan stood at the side and watched. He watched as the heretic screamed on the ground and curled up into a ball. Fengzhou watched from the side. He didn't expect the evil cultivator to be so cruel when it came to interrogating people. The pain of pinching the bones in a person's body before reattaching them was so excruciating that it was worse than death. It wasn't something that an ordinary person could endure. The evil cultivator probably wouldn't be able to hold on for long before he relented. I'll talk. The evil cultivator said in a trembling voice, I just want a quick death. Speak. Won Yenshir-san stood in front of the evil cultivator with his arms crossed and stared at him, waiting for him to continue. Chapter 30-29. She fell off the cliff. We didn't search for her, so we don't know if she's dead or alive. The evil cultivator said with a trembling voice. His voice was weak, as if he could not breathe at any time. Hearing this, the two's hearts sank. Fell off the cliff. Was there a chance for her to survive? No, she should still be alive. Her life jade tablet was still there. She should still be alive. Which cliff? Where did the protector go? Why isn't he here? Fengzhou asked, staring at the evil cultivator on the ground. Just walk straight ahead, and you'll see a cliff. She fell from there. She was hit by a poisonous hidden weapon. I don't think she'll survive. When the evil cultivator saw their cold expressions, there was only despair in his eyes. He knew that he wouldn't be able to survive here, and no one could save him. He only wanted to die a quick death, so he told them everything he knew. Our protector went back, leaving us here to collect the blood essence and souls of these women. We planned to leave after dealing with these women, but we didn't expect to meet you. Won Yenshir-san's face darkened. He waved his hand and ended the evil cultivator's life. He looked at Fengzhou and said, I plan to go to the cliff to take a look. Okay, I'll go with you. Fengzhou said, then turned to Perfected Qin and said, Perfected Qin, I'll have to trouble you to send these women back. We'll part ways here. You want to go to the cliff yourself? Perfected Qin was surprised. He knew that they were here to look for someone. However, the evil cultivator said so. Did they not think that person could still be alive? I'll have to trouble you to take care of these women. Fengzhou said and nodded slightly. Perfected Qin could only nod. I know, don't worry. I'll send these women back. However, it's late at night, and it's not easy to find the road at night. Even if you go to the cliff, you won't be able to see anything because of the darkness. Why don't you rest tonight and make arrangements tomorrow? Hearing this, the two nodded. All right, it's decided then. Thus, they found a place to settle down, and at the same time, made sure that the women were within their line of sight. Won Yenshir-san did not rest that night. Instead, he was busy dealing with the hidden ghosts in the forest. The next morning, Fengzhou and Won Yenshir-san parted ways with him. Before they parted, Chen Jinren looked at them and said, the two of you, if you have the opportunity to visit the Xiaoyao sect in the future, I will treat you well. Definitely. The two of them smiled and nodded. After saying their goodbyes, they watched as he led the women away on his flying artifact. When they could no longer be seen, Fengzhou and Won Yenshir-san walked deeper into the forest. They followed the trees until they reached the cliff. Standing at the edge of the cliff and looking down, they saw that it was a vast expanse of green. It was also a dense forest. However, at this height, if an injured person fell down, he was afraid that let's go down and take a look. Fengzhou said, looking down. He hoped that his sister was saved by someone. Otherwise, the odds would be stacked against him. Chapter 30-30. The two of them flew down on their swords, the cold wind blowing in their faces was somewhat bone-chilling. The closer they got to the bottom, the clearer the roars of the beasts became. When the two of them landed on the ground, they looked around and said, there should be many beasts roaming around here. Let's split up and search. Regardless of whether we find them or not, we'll meet at the tallest tree before sunset. Fengjiu pointed to an extremely tall tree in front of them and said. All right, be careful. Wang Yanshi said. Because he knew her strength, he was not too worried that she would encounter danger here. Fengjiu responded and headed in one direction. Wang Yanshi also headed in the other direction, calling out Wang Yanqianhua's name. Sister. Sister. Where are you? Fengjiu shouted, while using her divine sense to explore the surrounding areas where people might be hiding. However, her call did not get any response from Wang Yanqianhua, but instead attracted a beast. Seeing the ferocious beast walking towards her with a ferocious look, Fengjiu glanced at it indifferently. With just a glance, the ferocious beast's legs went soft and it ran away, leaving behind a cloud of dust. As she walked forward, she was also calculating in her heart. Her sister had been poisoned and fell down here, so there were only 3 outcomes. One was that she died here and was eaten by a ferocious beast without leaving a corpse behind. 2 was that she was rescued and taken away from here. The last possibility was that she was hiding somewhere to recuperate. The first and last possibilities could be eliminated, because if she died here, then her life jade tablet would not light up. As for hiding and recuperating, based on the medicinal pills she gave her, if she recovered a little, she should contact her master. Then, only the middle possibility was left. If she was rescued and taken away, at least they would know that she was alive, so there was no need to worry too much. She believed that as long as she recovered, she would definitely return to the immortal sect. As she thought, she walked forward. When she heard a signal in the sky, she instinctively looked up and saw that a distress signal had popped up in the sky. When she saw that it was a distress signal from the Blue Star Immortal Sect, she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. CK and Mu Axian had both given her the Immortal Sect's distress signal, saying that if she encountered any danger or trouble that she could not solve, she could release the Immortal Sect's distress signal. As long as there were disciples of the Immortal Sect nearby, they would come to help. She didn't expect to see the Blue Star Immortal Sect's distress signal here. Although she wasn't a member of the Immortal Sect, she still had some connections with them. Moreover, she had been using the Immortal Sect's name to do things. Now that she saw the Immortal Sect's distress signal, it wouldn't be right if she didn't go and take a look. Just as she was thinking, she saw 2 more distress signals being released. When she saw this, her eyes flashed slightly. They had released several distress signals in a row, so it was obvious that the situation was very dangerous. In that case, she should go and take a look. Chapter 30-31. What should we do? We can't hold them off any longer. One of the women's eyes were red and her face was filled with despair. Don't worry about us. Hurry up and run for your lives. The men on the ground behind them urged them to run for their lives. Impossible. We can't leave you behind. Another woman said and gritted her teeth, at most, we'll perish together with these ferocious beasts. Hearing these words, the men felt upset, but there was nothing they could do. In this place, especially in this situation, they had been running for their lives and fighting all the way here. They had already used up all the weapons they could use. Even their life-saving treasures were gone. Now, they could only pin their hopes on the sect's distress signal. However, how could their sect's members be at the bottom of such a deep cliff? They were afraid that this time, only death awaited them. You could have survived, but you chose to stay and die. I can only say that you're stupid. One of the men with a grim expression stared coldly at them. If it weren't for the 2 of you, we wouldn't have ended up like this. Hurry up and get out of here. When the 2 women heard this, they couldn't help but grit their teeth. Tears welled up in their eyes, but they still had no intention of escaping. Although they were also injured, they should still be able to escape if they left them behind. However, if they escaped, the few senior brothers would really only have one path, which was death. As long as they escaped, those ferocious beasts would definitely pounce forward to tear them into pieces and eat them into their stomachs without anyone to stop them. They were all heaven's favored children of the sect, so how could they end up without a corpse remaining? Didn't you hear me? Get out of here. You don't need to stay here and block them for us. The grim man shouted again. His voice was sharp and his gaze was cold. Every word of his pierced the hearts of the two women, causing them to feel so uncomfortable that they cried. However, they knew that he wanted to force them to leave so that they could continue living. When the other men heard the grim man's words, they remained silent. However, when they saw that the two women didn't leave no matter how much the grim man scolded them, they sighed softly. Forget it. Since they're not leaving, stop scolding them. They won't feel good if you continue scolding them. Hiss. The ferocious beasts approached step by step and roared. They opened their mouths, revealing sharp teeth that were dripping with saliva. It was as if they had seen something delicious. They roared as they walked forward. When one of the women saw this, she said, "I'll use my spiritual aura to set up a defensive barrier. Hopefully, it can hold them off for a while." As she spoke, she used her remaining spiritual aura and set up a defensive barrier around them. The airflow visible to the naked eye surged and formed a small defensive shield, protecting the few people in the middle. The two women didn't dare to be careless. They still stood there with swords in their hands and stared ahead. When the ferocious beasts in front of them saw that they had set up a defensive shield, they let out a low roar and one of them pounced forward. Chapter 30-32 TSK 5 Sacred Beasts and 2 Divine Beasts. You guys sure know how to provoke them. Fengjiu walked out of the forest and glanced at the few people in the defensive barrier, then looked at the ferocious beasts. Those 5 sacred beasts were nothing in her eyes, but those 2 divine beasts had already reached the level of divine beasts. Their fur was snow white with black stripes, and they made her eyes light up. Sigh, her man had said that he wanted 2 ferocious beasts to guard the door. These 2 ferocious beasts looked pretty good. Roar! One of the ferocious beasts bared its sharp teeth and pounced at Fengjiu. Fengjiu only glanced at it indifferently, then raised his hand and slapped the ferocious beast away. Roar! The ferocious beast was sent flying, and the 2 sharp teeth in front of its mouth fell out. Its roar turned into a wail, and it looked at Fengjiu in horror, not daring to move forward. Seeing this scene, the few people in the defensive barrier were stunned. What happened just now? They only saw that person raise his hand and slap the ferocious beast, and it was sent flying. Was it sent flying? After their astonishment, their eyes lit up. Maybe this person could save them. At that moment, they shouted at the man in green who was walking over, Senior, save us. Senior. Fengjiu was slightly stunned. He lowered his head and looked at her. She had even become a senior. However, she was more powerful than them, so it was normal for her to call him senior. There are so many ferocious beasts surrounding them. Don't you feel embarrassed? Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and glanced at the 2 divine beasts. The more he looked at them, the more he felt that the 2 ferocious beasts' skins were very beautiful. They were black and white and looked majestic. It would be a good idea to bring them back to guard the door. Roar! One of the ferocious beasts roared, but its voice was loud and clear. In the end, because of Fengjiu's glance, it turned into a soft howl and even lowered its head. Don't be noisy, don't shout. My temper isn't very good. If you make me angry, you'll have to pay for it. As she spoke, she stepped forward and looked at the beasts that were retreating vigilantly. She smiled and said, "Don't even think about running away. I haven't allowed you to leave yet. You too, I need 2 watchdogs. Come back with me." She stared at the 2 ferocious tigers with a smile. However, her smiling appearance and casual tone made the 2 ferocious tigers shudder involuntarily. Instinctively, they felt that this human was very dangerous. One of the ferocious tigers lowered its front 2 legs and let out a muffled roar. It stared at Fengzhou with its bloodshot eyes. In the next moment, it stomped its hind legs and charged at Fengzhou with its sharp tiger claws. "Ah! Senior, be careful." The 2 women inside the defensive barrier cried out in alarm. They were afraid that the slim chance of survival they had with great difficulty would turn into a bubble in the end. However, after seeing the next scene, their worries turned into dumbfoundedness. The ferocious tiger that had pounced forward was kicked away by the green-clothed man. At the same time, before the ferocious tiger could leap up, the green-clothed Feng Jiu rushed forward and punched and kicked the ferocious beast. Punches landed one after another, and muffled groans and howls could be heard, causing the hearts of those who heard them to tremble in fear. Roar! Chapter 30-33. Bang! After the other tiger fell from the sky, it lay on the ground for a long time without being able to get up. It could only howl as it looked at Fengzhou in shock. On the other side, the tiger that was being beaten by Fengzhou howled and finally begged for mercy in human language. "Stop fighting, stop fighting. How about it? How about coming back with me to guard the door?" Fengzhou stopped and patted the male tiger lying at her feet with one hand. These 2 tiger beasts were a male and a female, and they had both reached the level of mythological beast. It would be best to bring them back. "We are tigers, and divine beasts at that. We are not dogs, how can you let us guard the door?" The male tiger protested in a low voice, its voice getting softer and softer. In the end, it did not dare to say another word. It wanted to escape, but it was unable to do so due to the powerful pressure of the other party. They could not understand, how could there be such a perverted person in this place? The powerful aura of this human was one thing, but the most important thing was that this human had the pressure of an ancient divine beast. If the other party was only powerful, they could still fight to the death, but once they encountered the ancient pressure, they did not even have the ability to fight. Even if they were mythological beasts, in the face of an ancient mythological beast, they still couldn't do anything. It was a kind of spiritual submission, a kind of uncontrollable impulse to kneel down and worship. Compared to the king of beasts, the ancient mythological beast was an existence that beasts didn't dare to be presumptuous. Is there a need to consider? Fengzhou's voice still sounded indifferent, but it made the 2 divine beasts shiver. They immediately said, We are willing to follow Master, we are willing to listen to Master's orders." "Good." Fengzhou smiled with satisfaction and glanced at the divine beasts. "Why aren't you scramming?" The divine beasts were so scared that they quickly ran away. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared, leaving behind the stunned people who were still in the defensive barrier. Fengzhou walked in front of the defensive barrier with his hands behind his back. He looked at the few heavily injured men and the 2 blood-stained women who were still holding onto their swords on guard. He asked, "Are you disciples of the Blue Star Immortal sect?" At this time, they came back to their senses. The 2 women cupped their hands and "Thank you for saving our lives, Senior. We are all disciples of the Blue Star Immortal sect. May I ask for your name? We will definitely repay you in the future." Fengzhou stretched out her hand and pointed forward, and the defensive barrier shattered with a bang. She took a step forward and glanced at the men lying on the ground. "Looks like your injuries aren't light." In addition to the claws of the ferocious beasts, there are also traces of other attacks. She paused, glanced at them, and asked casually, "What did you guys do?" "Master, they stole the longevity fruit that we've been guarding for 100 years. The male tiger said as he stared at those people with an unfriendly gaze. Hearing this, the two women couldn't help but gulp and looked at Fengjiu with some vigilance. This person was so strong. If he wanted to snatch the longevity fruit that they had picked with great difficulty, then wouldn't they be unable to protect it? At this time, the cold man glanced at Fengjiu and said to one of the women, "Junior Sister Mu, this senior saved us. Let's give him the longevity fruit." Chapter 30-34. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled. She watched as the woman took out a box and handed it to her. "Senior, this is the life fruit." Fengjiu glanced at the box and saw that the fruit was about the size of a fist. The fruit was purple and white in color. Spiritual qi overflowed from it and the fragrance of the fruit assailed her nostrils. It looked very delicious. She glanced at the cold man with a smile that was not a smile. She found it funny. This man was worried that she would attack them because of the life fruit and kill them to snatch the fruit. That was why he gave her the life fruit in order to save his life. She had to admit that this person was quite smart. If it was someone else who saw the life fruit, they would probably kill them and run away. However, she did not care about these two fruits. She said, "Put it away. Compared to these two fruits, I prefer treasures and the like. A life-saving grace can also be repaid with treasures, do you understand?" Hearing this, the few of them were stunned. This person did not want the life fruit. Did he not know how precious the life fruit was? It was a spirit fruit that could extend one's life and increase one's strength. It took 500 years for it to bloom and bear fruit. How could it be measured by wealth? "Senior, you don't want the life fruit." The woman surnamed Mu was stunned and did not react. Fengjiu glanced at her and said, "Why aren't you helping them treat their wounds? If you delay any longer, they won't be able to live." Hearing this, the woman came back to her senses and put away the life essence fruit. She helped the people who were leaning against each other to stand up under a big tree and bandaged their wounds. "You guys wait here first. Don't run around. I won't be responsible if you are eaten by the fierce beasts." Fengjiu instructed them. Then, he left a fierce tiger to watch the surroundings and walked into the forest with another tiger. "Let's go. Take me to see what the life fruit tree looks like." Fengjiu mounted the fierce tiger and walked into the depths of the forest. As they walked, the tiger asked, "Master, there are no more fruits on the longevity fruit tree. The next time it bears fruit will be 1,000 years later. What's the point of looking at it now?" Then, he couldn't help but ask, "Master, why didn't you take the 2 life origin fruits? It's just 2 longevity fruits. They risked their lives to obtain them. What's the point of taking their fruits? Besides, it's useless to me." Fengjiu said leisurely as he sat on the tiger's back. "Master, it's useless for you, but it's useful for us. If we eat it, our strength will definitely break through another level." The tiger quickly said. Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled, "As long as you guys are obedient and guard the door obediently, don't talk about first level, even breaking through and becoming a sacred beast is possible." As soon as he said this, the tiger instinctively wanted to turn its head. However, when it turned, it almost threw Fengjiu off its back. Fengjiu clasped the tiger's body and patted its head. "What are you doing?" "Master, you're telling the truth. We can become sacred beasts." At this time, the eyes of the tiger, who was already a sacred beast, were filled with surprise and excitement. It couldn't wait to turn around and see its master's expression when he said this. Chapter 30-35. Hearing this, the tiger immediately became excited. Master, master, then what good method do you have for us to advance? Fengjiu chuckled and said unhurriedly, after a long time, you will naturally know. The tiger brought Fengjiu to the place where the longevity fruit was planted and said, Master, this is the tree. The tiger crouched down and let Fengjiu down, while using its claws to point at the tree in front. Fengjiu looked at the tree that was about 3 to 4 meters tall in front of her. Seeing that there were only green leaves, she asked, this tree only bears 2 fruits. She walked up to the tree and could still vaguely smell the fragrance of the longevity fruit from the tree. This made her raise her eyebrows. There were no more fruits, but there was still a fruity fragrance. It was indeed not an ordinary spiritual fruit tree. However, looking at the tree was damaged and the leaves were not lush. There were also withered branches among the branches, as if it was about to wither. The tiger shook its head and said, I don't know. Maybe this tree can't bear fruit. When we found it, there were only 2 small fruits on the tree. It was not easy to wait until the fruits ripened, but they were stolen. This tree probably won't live for long. Hearing this, Fengjiu touched the tree and was about to withdraw her hand when she heard a small voice. Save me, save me. She looked around and did not see anyone. When she listened carefully, she found that the voice seemed to be coming from the tree. Her heart was slightly surprised. She put one hand on the tree and asked, Are you talking? I didn't say anything. The tiger looked at Fengjiu in confusion. Fengjiu ignored it and looked at the longevity tree in front of her. It's me, please save me. I feel that you have a very strong vitality, please save me. The voice was very soft. If she did not listen carefully, she would not have heard it. Have you become a spirit? Fengjiu's eyes flashed. I am a tree spirit, but I am too weak and cannot condense essence into form. I can only attach myself to the longevity tree. Hearing this, Fengjiu put one hand on the tree. With a thought, the longevity tree was moved into the space. This scene made the tiger beside her widen its eyes in shock. Let's go. Fengjiu turned and said to the tiger beast, then jumped on its back. The tiger beast wanted to ask, but it did not know how to ask. It just walked quietly and brought her back to the previous place. How are you guys? Have you rested well? Fengjiu got down from the tiger's back and walked towards the people resting under the tree. The 2 tiger beasts huddled together at this time and retreated to the side. They stuck their heads together and talked about something. They only looked at Fengjiu from time to time. Senior, we've already bandaged the external wounds of the senior brothers, but their internal injuries are also very serious. I'm afraid they won't be able to walk for a while. As the woman surnamed Mu spoke, she cautiously looked at Fengjiu. Senior, can you rest for a bit longer? Fengjiu glanced at them and asked, Don't you have an inner core? In this situation, they had to take an inner core. As long as they took it, their internal injuries would heal quickly. Otherwise, how could they recover slowly? Chapter 30-36. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled faintly. So you're saying that you have the ability to leave this place? As he spoke, he nodded without waiting for them to speak. That's true. I've already saved your lives. Whatever happens to you next has nothing to do with me. Senior, we're not. Before the man could finish speaking, he was interrupted. I was wondering why I saw the distress signal from the Blue Star Immortal Sect. So there are disciples of the Blue Star Immortal Sect here. Wanyan Shirsan walked over from nearby. When he saw Fengjiu, he was about to speak when he caught a glimpse of the 2 divine beast-level ferocious tigers at the side. He was immediately shocked. Damn! There are actually two ferocious beasts. And they're divine beast level. He stared at Fengzhou and gestured. Hurry up and come over. Why are you still standing there like a fool? Don't you see that those two divine beasts are closest to you? Fengzhou was stunned for a moment. He turned around and glanced at Wang Yanshirsan's nervous expression. He could not help but laugh. What are you nervous about? I just took them in. Ah. What? Did I hear wrongly? He stared at her with a stunned expression. Fengzhou smiled and explained, I said, I just took them in. My house is lacking two ferocious beasts to guard the door. I saw that these two tigers looked pretty good and majestic, so I wanted to bring them back to guard the house. You're really something. He did not know what to say. She came out to look for someone, and she actually got two divine beasts to guard the door. He was not convinced by heaven or earth, but he was really convinced by her. He strode forward and stared at the two divine beasts. Then, he looked at Fengzhou and asked, How did you take them in? I took them in with my fists. Fengzhou smiled mysteriously and glanced at the two divine beasts. TSK, you're not simple. He crossed his arms and stared at her. This little girl, she's really something. You saw the distress signal and came over? Fengzhou asked. Yes. Seeing that it was a distress signal from the Blue Star Immortal Sect, I wanted to come over and take a look. I didn't expect you to be here too. He looked at the people under the tree and walked over. Hey, what kind of disciples are you from the Immortal Sect? As he spoke, a pair of eyes sized them up, clearly understanding their strength and the current situation. We are core disciples. Senior, you are. So you are a core disciple. He nodded, and without giving them a chance to speak, he asked, Then let me ask you, did you meet Wanyan Qianhua here? Senior Sister Wanyan. No. They shook their heads and asked, Did something happen to Martial Sister Wanyan? Why did the two seniors come here to look for her? Wanyan Shirsand glanced at them and said sarcastically, What does it have to do with you where we are going to find her? On the other hand, each and every one of you is half dead. You still dare to say that you are core disciples? With such strength, you dare to come here. And he actually survived. How strange. When he said this, they did not say a word. They did not know who these two people were, but their strength was above theirs. If one of them angered them, who knew what would happen? Hey, I remember that you, little girl, are from Muexayan's clan. Wanyan Shirsand stared at one of the girls. Chapter 30-37. Hee, you haven't seen me before, but I've seen you before. Otherwise, how could I recognize you? Wanyan Shirsand said, then ignored her and ran to Fengzhou's side. He winked at Fengzhou and asked in a low voice, What does this have to do with you? What does it have to do with me? Fengzhou glared at him. How can it have nothing to do with you? Although I don't know where you came from, or what your relationship with the Blue Star Immortal Sect is, you were entrusted to me by CK and Muexayan. How can it have nothing to do with you? He stared at her with a look that said, Don't lie to me, I know you. Fengzhou's mouth twitched, but he couldn't be bothered to say more. He only said, We've searched this area, but we haven't found any news of my sister. I think she must have been rescued by someone, and she's probably not here anymore. If she was rescued, I think we'll have news about her after a while. Then what do you mean? He looked at her and asked. Fengzhou said slowly, The trail ends here. It's futile to continue searching, so it's better to wait for news. Listening to their conversation, the two mythical beasts squatting nearby looked at each other. They were a little confused when they heard about being rescued. They were only concerned about when their master would return. When could they evolve? When could they meet their master's other contracted beasts? But why didn't their master contract them? As Fengjiu and the others were talking, the people under the tree were also discussing. I think that if they can save us, they won't attack us. Also, they mentioned senior sister Wan Yan, so she should be someone related to our immortal sect. Now that we're seriously injured, even if we can barely recover, we won't be able to fight if we encounter danger again. Why don't we follow them? This way, we'll be safer. Yes, I agree. The man with the cold expression replied. He looked at the two people talking in front of him. But, will they refuse to let us go with them? After all. The two women were a little hesitant and worried. Whether we agree or not, we'll only know after we try. If we don't even dare to open our mouths, how will we have the opportunity to travel with them? If we miss this opportunity and lose our lives, won't we regret it? Hearing this, the few of them pondered. After a while, they secretly made up their minds. The few men felt the qi in their bodies gradually stabilizing, so they helped each other to stand up. The two women hurriedly helped to support them. Let's go. Let's go up and ask. Several men said as they walked forward step by step. Fengjiu and Wan Yanshi-san were talking. When they saw them, they stopped and looked at them. Senior, we would like to travel with you. Please bring us along. A man said. His first words were not a question, but a request. He knew that if he asked in an inquiring tone, the other party would most likely reject him. But if he asked, they would at least consider it. This way, they would have a better chance. Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at Wan Yanshi-san. When Wan Yanshi-san saw her looking at him, he said unhappily, "Why are you looking at me? Do we need you to make the decision? It's none of my business." He looked indifferent as he crossed his arms and looked away. Chapter 30-38. She didn't refuse, nor did she refuse. Instead, she asked, "How much are you willing to pay each of you for me to bring you along?" Hearing this, they were startled for a moment. They had never encountered such a situation before. The man who asked before paused for a moment, then followed Fengjiu's words and asked, "Senior, how much do you think is appropriate? Seeing that you are core disciples of the immortal sect, how about this? It's not much, just give me 1,000,000 gold coins each." She could use these gold coins to add more food to her purple gold twin deer. 1,000,000 gold coins. They were stunned. They didn't expect it to be so much. What? You think it's too expensive? Fengjiu glanced at them and said leisurely, "You should know that just those two fruits of yours are worth a lot of money. 1,000,000 gold coins per person to save your lives and help you keep those fruits. It's really a good deal. If it weren't for the fact that you are disciples of the immortal sect, I wouldn't have bothered to help." They hesitated for a moment. He was right. Not to mention other things, just the life origin fruit that took 500 years to bloom and 500 years to bear fruit was already not worth this price. Moreover, what about their safety? We agree. The cold man said and agreed. However, Senior must ensure that we can safely return to the immortal sect. If you follow me, as long as you don't cause trouble, there shouldn't be any problems. Fengjiu said and looked at Wan Yanshi-san. What about you? Are you going back to your family or the immortal sect? Wan Yanshi-san thought for a moment and said, I'll go with you to the immortal sect. Maybe if there's any news, her master will be the first to know. Right now, there's no big matter in my family, so there's no need to rush back. Fengjiu nodded and waved her hand. A simple flying ship appeared in front of them. She gestured to the people, get on. When they saw the spaceship, their eyes flashed slightly. After responding, they helped each other onto the spaceship. Wan Yenshirsan stared at the flying ship and clicked his tongue. I don't even have such a big flying ship. Your flying ship should have been simplified and shrunk, right? I don't think it's only at this level. Fengjiu smiled. There aren't many people. A spaceship this big is enough. Any bigger and it will attract too much attention. That's true. Wan Yenshirsan jumped up and found a place to sit down. Then, he saw that there was a lot of food on the ship. He couldn't help but walk to the place where the food was placed. He kept talking to himself. You too should shrink a little. Fengjiu glanced at the two tiger beasts. Yes, master. With a shake of their bodies, they shrunk to the size of a cat. They were inconspicuous, but also very similar to cats. At first glance, no one would think that they were two tiger beasts. After all, tigers and cats were originally of the same species. The group boarded the flying ship and went into the city. Along the way, the people on the flying ship only stared at the two of them and tried to find out their identities several times. However, they didn't manage to get anything out of them. Instead, the two of them figured out their own backgrounds. When they reached the city gate, Fengjiu found an inconspicuous place to keep the flying ship. She said to the few of them, "Let's go. If you want to rest, you have to go into the city to rest." Chapter 30-39. How do you relax? Fengjiu glanced at him. Seeing his mysterious look, she couldn't help but be curious. Wan Yenshirsan came over and was about to put his hand on her shoulder and put it on her back. But at this time, he remembered that she was a woman. He could not help but withdraw his hand and stared at her with a strange face. How many days has it been? I actually forgot that you're a woman. When these words came out, the people supporting her couldn't help but be startled. Their eyes fell on the figure in green at the same time, and their hearts were shocked. This person was a woman. Fengjiu glanced at him and said, I don't think you've treated me as a woman along the way. He who asked you to be so powerful that you don't seem like a woman. Wan Yenshirsan grinned and said, Forget it, I originally wanted to bring you to see the world, but it seems like I can go by myself. Brothel. What? Wan Yenshirsan glanced at her. Brothel? Do you think I'd go to that kind of place? Only those without status go to brothels. Those with status go to brothel now. Hearing this, she was slightly surprised. You've been there. Is there one in this city? Brothel of beauties can be found in every city. As long as there is a city, there will be a brothel of beauties. Tell me, how can there not be one here? Wan Yenshirsan laughed loudly and winked at her. Moreover, the beauties here are all unique. But they don't use their beauty to attract people. Every one of them has exquisite skills. What do you think? Are you interested? Shall I bring you to see? Hearing this, Fengjiu said to the people behind him, You guys find an inn to stay in. Yes. The few of them responded. After thinking for a while, they said, Senior, we'll go to the biggest inn in the city. If the two seniors come back, we'll go directly to the biggest inn in the city. We'll prepare a room for the two seniors. Okay. Fengjiu responded and followed Wan Yenshirsan to find out where Brothel of Beauties was. Behind her, two tiger beasts that looked like kittens followed closely. Their cute appearance attracted many women on the street to look. The two of them found out where Brothel of Beauties was. When they were let in, Wan Yenshirsan looked at Fengjiu with a fawning expression. Go, pay the entrance fee. You have the nerve make you go out make women pay. Although she said that, she still followed that person in to go inside to pay. Behind her, Wan Yenshirsan, I'm poor. I'm rich. As he said that, he looked around and saw many female cultivators, as well as some young ladies from families with veils on their faces. He couldn't help but ask in surprise, "Why are there so many women here today?" The maidservant leading the way smiled, "The two of you came at the right time. Tonight is our Brothel of Beauty's annual evaluation. Tonight, no matter if you're a female cultivator or a young lady from a noble family, you can participate in the evaluation. As long as you win, you'll receive a generous reward from Brothel of Beauties, and you'll also be known as the #1 beauty." "Ha ha ha, looks like we came at the right time today. We can actually see this. This money is worth it, it's worth it." He laughed loudly and strode inside. Chapter 30-40. After Fingzhou sat down, he listened to the beautiful sound of the zither coming from the center of the round stage. He felt that the sound of the zither was like pearls falling on a jade plate, melodious and pleasing to the ear. Even if he couldn't see the woman playing the zither, he could imagine the beauty of the woman from the beautiful sound of the zither. There were no less than 1,000 people in the building, but no one made any noise. Even if there were people talking, they only lowered their voices and whispered. Hearing the sound of the zither and looking at the scene in the building, Fingzhou couldn't help but praise, "This place is really not bad." Not bad, there was beauty to admire, and there was such a beautiful zither sound. Even though there were many people, the atmosphere here was very good. There was no noise or clamor, it was very suitable to come here and relax. Let me tell you, if you are judged as the #1 beauty in Beauty House, it will spread everywhere. Because the evaluation had not started yet, there were only beauties playing the zither in the building, so Wan Yanshirsan gestured for her to follow, and brought her to the other side. "Look here, there is a name on it. It will show which city, which family's daughter, or the woman in Beauty House is judged as the #1 beauty. Once these beauties are known, many aristocratic families will come to propose marriage. It can be said that once a person's beauty is judged, the imperial family's grandson, duke, marquis, and minister will want to marry her." Hearing this, Fingzhou smiled. "No wonder there are so many women competing. Hee, but I feel that if you participate, you will definitely be able to take first place." He winked at her and smiled. "How about it? Do you want me to help you sign up?" "Not interested." She shook her head. She really wasn't interested in this kind of evaluation. This evaluation is not only about beauty, but also about beauty, talent, strength, and wisdom. "Let's go. It will probably start soon. So many people have signed up, but not everyone can go on stage. Those who can go on stage are considered very outstanding." As he spoke, he brought Fingzhou back to the front row and sat down. Following the appearance of the beauties on stage, the talent competition also began. The two listened and watched from below the stage, and felt that the women on the round stage were very pleasing to the eye, elegant and charming. They used light veils to cover their faces, and their clothes couldn't be seen. They could only faintly see their figures, but even so, it was enough to make the people in the building very excited. The two tiger beasts lay in Fingzhou's arms, and while they were resting, the song and dance started. The lights on the stage changed, and the light in the building dimmed, causing everyone's eyes and attention on the round stage. The round stage. Looking Fingzhou's, who was in red in the forest, an unconscious beauty's SSSS, SSSSSS, SSSSS, SSSSS, SSS, TUS, they, SS's, SSS. In the forest. A while ago, there was a beauty in red who was seriously injured and fainted. "That's this, the male tiger whispered. Chapter 30-41. Master didn't say he was looking for the red-clothed beauty. It said in a low voice, but it didn't dare to say more. It just said, "And I didn't know Master was looking for the red-clothed beauty." Fingzhou couldn't help but touch his forehead and asked, "Then what happened?" What happened to the red-clothed beauty? Was she saved by someone? When I noticed her, she was being chased by several evil cultivators. At that time, she was seriously injured and looked like she was about to fall. At that time, I thought that if she fell, I would drag her back to the cave. Who knew that when she couldn't hold on and fell, a man in white appeared and saved her? A man in white. Fengjiu was slightly startled. Yes, a human man in white. That man was very cold and his aura was very strong. I didn't dare to approach him. At that time, I heard those evil cultivators exclaim and say something about Sword Master Xiao Yao. Then, they were killed by that man in white. Speaking of this, it shrunk its neck. That man also found me at that time and glanced at me. I saw that man was very dangerous, so I ran away first. Sword Master Xiao Yao. Wan Yanshi-san whispered, isn't that the sect master of the Xiao Yao sect? It is said that that person's whereabouts have always been erratic. If he is not in closed-door cultivation, he will disappear. How could he go to the forest and save Qianhua? Sect master of the Xiao Yao sect. Isn't that an old man? Fengjiu asked. No one knows how old that sword master Xiao Yao is. However, one thing is certain. He is definitely not within 100 years old. That person's strength is unfathomable. Furthermore, he rarely shows himself. Even I have only seen him from afar once many years ago in a large gathering. Wan Yanshi-san said and breathed a sigh of relief. If he was saved by that sword master Xiao Yao, then there is no need to worry. That sword master Xiao Yao is a righteous person. Qianhua will be fine with him. That's good. Fengjiu smiled and rubbed the tiger beast's head. If you had told us earlier, we wouldn't have to worry. While the two were chatting below the stage, the competition on the stage also continued, and gradually entered the final segment. The two saw a beautiful woman in her 30s come forward and say to the crowd, ladies and gentlemen, everyone has just appreciated the various talents. Next up is the competition of beauty. Today, not only are there beauties from our building, there are also some young ladies from aristocratic families. Who will be this year's #1 beauty? Let's wait and see. As soon as she finished speaking, she reached out and clapped her hands 3 times. The bead curtain on the round stage was rolled up, and the last 12 women stood on the stage in order. They still wore veils on their faces, and in their hands were the musical instruments from the previous competition. Some were dressed luxuriously, some were dressed simply, and some dare. Why is there a woman dressed like that standing on the stage? For a moment, everyone's gazes fell on a woman in a shabby dress with a piece of cloth on her face as a veil. All of them were somewhat dissatisfied. What they wanted to see were beauties. Why was there a woman who looked like a beggar on the stage? Moreover, she had become one of the 12 people. The other women on the stage either distanced themselves from her or avoided her. It was as if they were afraid of touching her. However, that woman stood there quietly with a zither in her arms. She was not frightened, nor was she flustered. It was as if the person everyone was talking about was not her. Chapter 30-42. She's not weak either. She's young, but she's already at the peak of the golden elixir realm. She's comparable to the daughters of the aristocratic families. That's not right. Just this calmness and composure is something that the daughters of the aristocratic families can't compare to. Wan Yanshi-san said, stroking his chin and chuckling, I wonder how she looks. Fengjiu watched with a slight smile on her lips. She looked at that woman, then her gaze swept past the other women, waiting for the moment when they removed their veils. At this moment, she couldn't help but be curious. What would that woman look like? Alright, everyone. Our beauty's restaurant has never cared about background. As long as you have the ability, you can participate. This is the rule of the beauty's restaurant. Everyone, look at this beauty. Whether it's her figure, temperament, or cultivation, they're all top-notch. If she were to change into a luxurious dress, would you still think that she's a beauty? The woman in her 30s covered her mouth and smiled, saying, "Next, let them remove their veils and reveal their faces." In addition to the 10 judges in our restaurant, the guests sitting in the first row can each cast a vote. As she spoke, she retreated to the side and gestured for the first woman to remove her veil and reveal her face to the crowd. This was the last segment of the competition. It was also an extremely important segment to determine whether a person was a beauty or not. Even the daughters of aristocratic families could only remove their veils here. After the first woman removed her veil, she raised her head confidently and looked forward. The women behind her also removed their veils one by one. Every time a woman's veil was removed, it was met with a wave of cheers from below. Until the last woman, who was the woman in plain clothes, removed her veil. In an instant, there was a wave of gasps from below the stage. Some people even lost their self-control and stood up. Their eyes were fixed on the stunningly beautiful woman on the stage. The woman was dressed in a plain and shabby gray dress. Compared to the other women, she really looked like a beggar on the street. However, the moment she removed her veil, her exquisite facial features and unique temperament made people unable to take their eyes off her. Especially the enchanting red flower in the corner of her left eye, which added a bit of mystery and coldness to her. Beauty number 12 is really beautiful. Not bad. She's even more beautiful than the Jade Beauty in the Beauty's restaurant last year. It's a pity that she's only wearing a shabby dress. If she were to change into a gorgeous dress, how magnificent would she be? Who is this woman? Is she also from this city? Why haven't I heard of her before? I'm going to propose marriage to this beauty and bring her home. Haha, that's right. She's a beauty at the peak of the golden elixir realm. She's definitely qualified to enter my Chin family. For a moment, the people below the stage were talking about it. They were already planning to find someone to propose marriage to that girl and bring her home. Listening to the words of the gorgeously dressed men below, the woman on the stage didn't even change her expression. She just stood there quietly, narrowed her eyes, and hugged the zither in her arms tightly. Chapter 30-43. What's interesting? Wan Yen Shirsan asked. He looked at the woman holding the zither and praised, "The flower at the corner of this woman's eyes adds a lot of charm. It's very unique." Fengjiu smiled and did not answer. He just looked at the crowd's evaluation. In the end, the woman holding the zither won first place. "Miss, what's your name?" The woman in her 30s on the stage asked with a smile. When she participated, she only took a number and did not write down her name. "Where's my reward?" The woman did not say her name and only asked. "It's here." The woman in the building asked someone to bring the reward and said with a smile, "There's a third-rank qi nourishing pill, a spiritual medicine, and 1,000 gold coins." The woman took the things and put them in her sleeves, saying, "Thank you." Then, she held the zither and walked off the stage. "Hey, miss, your name." The woman did not even leave her name and left. Many people let the guards follow her, wanting to see what family the woman was from. Fengjiu patted the 2 tiger beasts' heads and said, "Go. Let's go and see." The 2 tiger beasts jumped out of her arms and quickly went into the crowd and left. Seeing this, Wan Yen Shirsan felt a little strange. Why did you let them follow that woman? Don't tell me you're really interested in her. You're a woman. Fengjiu did not say anything. He just watched the women on the stage leave. In the end, the woman in the beauty building played a song for the crowd. Some people even went on the stage to compete with the beauties. The scene gradually became lively, but he was not in the mood to continue watching. It's getting late. Let's go back, Fengjiu said. He stood up and walked out. This beauty building should be a place to gather information. It was mainly women and gathered all kinds of people. Moreover, they were scattered in various cities. It seemed that this force was also very big. But who was it? After leaving the beauty building, Wang Yanshirsan stretched and said, I originally wanted to book a room in the building and call 2 beauties to serve me. I didn't expect it to become a competition. I don't even know the name of the most beautiful one. Hey, why do I feel like I lost out tonight? On the way back to the inn, he was still talking about it. Fengjiu could not bear it and said directly, how about I find 2 beauties to serve you tonight? I'm not a person who likes beauties. I just think. He wanted to say more, but when he saw Fengjiu's glance, he could not help but swallow his words. This little girl's gaze was enough to scare people to death. He really didn't know which man could stand her. Senior, you're back. Have you eaten? I'll ask the waiter to prepare some food for you. The 2 women saw the 2 of them come in and hurriedly greeted them. Send them to the room, Fengjiu said. He walked upstairs and asked, which room am I in? The first room on the left. The woman then said to Wang Yanshir-san, Senior is in the second room. After seeing the 2 of them enter their rooms, the 2 women could not help but look at each other. They asked the waiter to bring them food and then went to the other 2 rooms to see their senior. Chapter 30-44. The tiger beast paused, then continued, but those people were shaken off by that woman, but they didn't discover me. It raised its head proudly and wagged its tail. You stayed there to keep watch, then came back to report. Fengjiu looked at it amusedly, reaching out to pat its head. Yes, master. That woman used the money she won to buy medicine. She also gave the medicine she won to an old man. However, that old man's aura was very weak. He should be dying soon. Also, that woman went back and wiped the flowers off her face. Then, she disguised herself as a man. Let's go. Let's go take a look, Fengjiu said, opening the door and walking out. Only then did she and the tiger beast go out, and Wang Yanshir-san sneakily followed behind them. However, they didn't walk far before Fengjiu discovered them. She stopped and looked back, saying, if you want to follow me, then walk faster. Why are you sneaking behind me? The corner of Wang Yanshir-san's mouth twitched, and he walked out from the shadows. You can discover me like this? You don't see the shadow on the ground. She glanced at him from the corner of her eyes, then looked towards the shadow on the ground. Hearing this, Wang Yanshir-san chuckled, I'm getting on in years, and many things aren't as good as before. Look at how careless I can be when following someone. He smiled embarrassedly, and walked to Fengjiu's side, but, where are you going? Don't tell me you're really going to that beauty's place. Fengjiu didn't say much, and only followed the tiger beast forward, passing through the bustling streets, and walking towards the slums. They came to a large tree, then leaped onto the tree, and under the cover of the large tree, they looked at a dilapidated house not far in front of them. In the dim light, a man dressed in gray was helping an old woman to press on her acupuncture points. There was a scar at the corner of the man's eye, and this scar ruined his delicate face. However, if they had seen this person dressed as a woman tonight, they probably wouldn't have thought that this person in front of them was the woman who won the title of number 1 beauty. Right now, she was dressed as a man, and her gray clothes were simple and shabby. Her chest was flat and her waist was wide, and her face was sallow, and that scar, no matter how they looked at it, was so inconspicuous. So there's a scar on her face. She really does look ugly, no wonder she didn't dare to leave her name. Wan Yenshir-san said. He thought that he would see a woman dressed as a man, but he didn't expect to see a woman dressed as a man. Thinking, he looked at her, and looked at Fengzhou. This woman is quite clever, and like you, she likes to dress as a man. Clever. Fengzhou smiled slightly, looking at the woman dressed as a man, and said, dressing as a woman, using tricks to cover up the flaws on her face, and winning the reward of Beauty's house, and being able to get away from Beauty's house and those people following her, this person is not just a little clever. Her voice paused, and her eyes flashed, and she said, moreover, not every woman likes to dress as a man. Most of the time, it's just to avoid trouble, and to protect themselves. Hearing this, Wan Yenshir-san looked at her, and asked, then why did you let the two divine beasts follow her? Chapter 30-45. Wan Yenshir-san stared blankly for a moment before he saw her jump down from the tree and stride towards the house. Behind her was a black and white tiger beast. Seeing this, Wan Yenshir-san mumbled to himself and followed her into the house without any ambition. In the house, the woman helped the old woman massage her and said, I'll use my spiritual energy to help you unblock your meridians. Take the chi nurturing pill later and you should be able to get out of bed and walk around in a few days. Miss, I'm just a servant. You don't have to do so much for me. I know that I won't be able to live for much longer. You won those pills with great difficulty. You should keep them for yourself. I won't take them. The old woman on the bed spoke in a weak voice. Her eyes were swollen and her legs were white and swollen. She looked as if she was about to die. The woman only calmly said, I don't need those pills. Don't think about anything else right now. Taking care of your body is the most important thing. As she spoke, she glanced at the little cat that was squatting by the bed and looking at her. She didn't know where this little cat had come from, but from the looks of it, it didn't look like an ordinary cat. Furthermore, it seemed to understand her words. Whenever she spoke, it would listen to her. Miss, I've dragged you down. Cough, cough. As the old woman spoke, she suddenly coughed. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth and her breathing gradually weakened. Seeing this, the woman quickly took out the chi nurturing pill and was about to feed it to her. However, the old woman pulled up the blanket and covered her mouth. She weakly said, Miss, I won't eat it. I won't eat it. You should keep it. I'm about to die. It's a waste to eat something so precious. I won't eat it. I'll leave it for Mississippi, you'll die if you don't eat it. The woman's voice rose slightly, her eyes filled with anxiety. It's good that I'm dead. If I'm dead, miss, you won't have to stay here with this old woman. If I'm dead, miss, you can leave in peace. Miss, when I'm dead, you should go home. That's your father after all. Go home and he'll take care of you. Eat the chi nurturing pill. The woman said as she removed the blanket from the old woman's mouth. Chi nourishing pills can't save her life. Fengzhou's voice slowly drifted out. She was dressed in green as she walked in. She looked at the girl and said, you should know that her lifespan is almost up. Even a chi nourishing pill cannot save her. Master. The tiger beast man squatting by the bed called out happily and quickly came to her feet. Hearing the kitten speak, the woman's expression changed slightly. She looked at the Fengzhou and asked coldly, who are you people? What are you doing here? Fengzhou chuckled and said, don't be nervous, I don't have any bad intentions. It's just that my residence is short of people, and I happen to see that Miss is intelligent, meticulous, and cautious in handling matters, so I thought to ask if Miss is interested in working in my residence. Unfortunately, I overheard your conversation outside. It seems that this lady is a young lady. As she spoke, she paused for a moment before continuing with a smile. That's how it should be. After all, Mrs. Zither's skills can be said to be unparalleled, and your appearance is not something that ordinary people can compare to. How could you possibly be a girl from an ordinary family? Chapter 30-46. Don't worry, I said I have no ill intentions. Fengjiu said with a smile. She glanced at the old woman and said to the woman, it seems that I came at a bad time. How about this? Think about it carefully. If you have nowhere to go in the future, you can come to the Feng family in Four Corners City to find me. My surname is Feng. With that, she didn't stay any longer. Instead, she turned and walked out. Seeing this, Wang Yanshi touched his chin and walked out in a daze. When he was outside, he asked with some confusion, you said that? You're leaving just like that? Didn't you say you liked that woman? Fengjiu glanced back at him and said with a smile, what? Do you think I'll rob her? Even if you don't have to force her, you should at least say something enticing to let her know what benefits there are for her to follow you. At the very least, you should tell her that you're a woman, so that she won't think you're after her beauty. Wang Yanshi rolled his eyes at her and said, you just said that the manor is short of people and told her to come to the Feng family in Four Corners City to find you when she has nowhere to go in the future. Do you think she will go? In my opinion, you came here for nothing tonight. Fengjiu chuckled and shook her head. Do you think she really got rid of the people from the beauty pavilion? Hearing this, Wang Yanshi was startled and asked, you mean, the people from the beauty pavilion are still watching her? But, didn't they say she got rid of them? How? Before he finished speaking, he paused. Yes, the forces of the beauty pavilion were distributed in various cities, and there were people in charge of the beauty pavilion. In addition to beauties, there were also many masters. As long as they investigated, how could they not find out that this woman was hiding here? Seeing her walk back and forth, he couldn't help but quickly follow and stare at her with a strange expression. This evildoer, she wouldn't be waiting for that woman to have no way out before she made her move, right? Walking on the street, because the night was getting darker, there were not many pedestrians on the street. Only some vendors were packing up. She said, now that you have news of my sister, why don't you go back and report it? Do you plan to keep following me? Keep following you. Don't forget that they were the ones who asked you to follow me. Wang Yanshi sneered. He stared at her and asked, we've known each other for so long, but you still haven't told me who CK and Muaxian are to you. Why did the two of them keep telling me to take good care of you? Do they know how perverted you are? The two of them are my disciples, Fengjiu said, glancing at him. Seeing the shock on his face, he asked with a smile, what? You don't believe me? I don't. Wang Yanshi shook his head and said, both of them are heavenly gods. How can they be your disciples? Don't be so ridiculous. Don't ask me if you don't believe me. You won't believe me anyway. She yawned and said, I'm tired. I need to go back and have a good sleep. If I don't leave my room tomorrow, don't disturb me. As soon as she finished speaking, her figure flashed and disappeared from the street. The two tiger beasts were stunned for a moment, but they quickly followed her, leaving Wang Yanshi walking alone on the street. Chapter 30-47. The next morning, two female disciples sent breakfast to their senior brothers. Seeing that their bodies were much better after a day of rest, they were relieved and smiled. Have the two seniors woken up yet? A male disciple asked. They haven't woken up yet. They haven't moved, but they've hung a sign on the door, telling us not to disturb them. The female disciple with the surname Mu said. Hearing this, several people paused for a moment. Someone asked, "Who are these two people?" "I don't know. I've never seen them before. They shouldn't be from our sect," the two women said. "Both of them look very strong, especially the senior in green. Yesterday, the senior said that she's a woman." One of them hesitated and looked at the others. "Do you think that the senior in green is really a woman? Can a woman be that strong?" "I can't tell. But since that senior said so, it shouldn't be wrong." The few of them were talking. Seeing that the cold-looking man didn't speak, one of them asked, "Senior Brother Chin, what are you thinking about?" The man looked over and glanced at them. Then, he shifted his gaze to the window and said, "When I woke up this morning, I released a signal. If there are any disciples of our immortal sect nearby, they will rush over. Later, when you go downstairs, take a look and pay more attention. Aren't we following the two seniors? If the two seniors find out that we're secretly contacting other disciples of the sect, won't they be angry?" One of them said worriedly. "Probably not. After all, we're not contacting other people. We're just disciples of the sect." "All right then. I'll go downstairs and take a look," one of the women said and left first. "Junior Sister Mu, you should leave too. Pay more attention to the movements of those two," the man with the surname Chin instructed. "Got it, Senior Brother Chin," the woman replied and left. Wanyan Shursan slept until noon. When he woke up and washed up, he realized that Fengzhou was still asleep. He wanted to wake her up, but when he thought of her instructions last night, he shrugged and ignored her. He just asked the waiter to serve some food and wine. However, he was surprised to see that the disciples of the immortal sect were sitting on the first floor and eating. Among them, there were two disciples wearing the robes of the Blue Star Immortal Sect. Senior is awake." The few people downstairs greeted Wanyan Shursan when they saw him. "I'm awake," Wanyan Shursan replied and nodded at them. Then, he followed them downstairs and sat at a table. "Senior, these two people are disciples of the immortal sect. They just happen to be in this city," a woman said as she looked at the two disciples on the side. "Senior Wanyan." When the two of them saw Wanyan 13, they immediately bowed respectfully. "You know me." Wanyan Shursan's tea. Shursan. As they were not core disciples, they were not as strong as the people around them. Therefore, they could only address Wanyan Qianhua as Shursan and not Senior Sister. They paused and one of them asked, "Senior Wanyan must have come here to ask about Shursan. I wonder if Senior has any news about our Shursan." Chapter 30-48. When they heard this, surprise flashed across their eyes. "There's news about Uncle Master Wanyan." "There is, but why should I tell you?" Wanyan Shursan glanced at them and poured himself a glass of wine. He looked as if he was going to piss them off, and the disciples were stunned. Why didn't he tell them? They wouldn't do anything to Uncle Master Wanyan. "Waiter, are my dishes ready?" "Why are they so slow?" Wanyan Shursan shouted impatiently. Coming. The waiter answered and brought out the dishes. He put the dishes on the table and said to Wanyan Shursan, "Sir, please eat these two dishes first. The others will be served soon." After saying this, the waiter left. Wanyan Shursan picked up his chopsticks and knocked on the table. He glanced at them and said unhappily, "Why are you all staring at me? What are you doing that you shouldn't be doing?" When they heard this, they returned to their rooms to rest and recuperate. As for Fengzhou, she didn't leave until evening. However, the two tiger beasts behind her didn't follow her. When Wan Yenshir-san saw that the two tiger beasts had disappeared, he asked, "You sent them out?" "Yes," Fengjiu replied. She went to the first floor and ordered a few dishes and a bottle of wine. While waiting for the dishes to be served, she sensed that someone was looking at her. She followed the gaze and saw that it was two men wearing the robes of immortal sect disciples. She raised her eyebrows and asked, "What's up with those two? Where did they come from?" "They said that they happened to meet them in the city." Wan Yenshir-san smiled and looked at Fengjiu with a faint smile. "I reckon that those people were curious about your identity. I heard that they were disciples who were training outside and hadn't returned to the immortal sect for a long time. So, when they met those two disciples, they must have asked about you." "Oh, I see." She nodded, indicating that she understood. Judging from the two men's expressions, they probably couldn't recognize her. After all, she had disguised her appearance and wasn't wearing a dazzling red dress. Even CK and Mu Axeon wouldn't be able to recognize her if they were here. In the room upstairs, a few people looked at the two disciples and asked, "Who is that Qing Yi? Do you recognize him?" The two disciples shook their heads and said, "I've never seen him before. I can't recognize him." "Impossible," one of the men said. After thinking for a while, he continued, "That green-robed senior must have changed her appearance. When I heard them talking, that senior Wan Yen said that she was a woman. I don't know. I can't recognize it." The two shook their heads. Upon hearing this, the man with the surname Qin asked with a solemn expression, "Did anything major happen in the sect after we left?" "Something big." When the two heard this, they hesitated and didn't know what to say. Of course, something big had happened during this period of time. Furthermore, it was something that had shaken the entire sect. Apart from the disciples who were training outside, it could be said that almost everyone in the sect knew about it. "Speak. Stop hemming and hawing," he said coldly. "You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.